For the second consecutive day, angry crowds clashed with law enforcement following a series of ICE raids that drew condemnation from local leaders.
LA riots, civil action or engineered distraction? Hello there, you awakening wonders. Remember, we stream these days at these times. Tune in to get an unbiased take. Yeah, that's right. I'm unbiased. I'm fully clear now. The information I give you bears no personal prejudices. For example, we can look at the LA riots now and say, how does Gavin Newsom benefit from these disturbances? How does Donald Trump benefit from these disturbances? Was the introduction of the National Guard an attempt to inflame and exacerbate or control and curtail? These are some of the questions that we'll be answering. Do you believe it was a distraction from the big breakup last week? Or is this what happens when Gavin Newsom governs the fifth most powerful economy in the world into the ground? Let's have a look at how the legacy media are handling it.
Tonight, protests escalating into conflict in Los Angeles as the Trump administration's aggressive deportation efforts spark fear and outrage across the country. For the second consecutive day, angry crowds clashed with law enforcement following a series of ICE raids that drew condemnation from local leaders.
You cannot just come into the community and terrorize citizens the way you did.
An ICE raid in Paramount today devolving into chaos. Dramatic aerial footage showing protesters blocking a bus carrying officers. Police in riot gear dispersing crowds with flashbangs and tear gas. The FBI vowing to find people they say threw rocks at law enforcement vehicles. And in New York, video showing this man, which the Department of Homeland Security identified as Joaquin Rosario Espinal of the Dominican Republic. Authorities say Espinal resisted arrest following the dismissal of his immigration proceedings. He and another woman who allegedly assaulted an officer were arrested, authorities say, despite interference by members of the public. The Department of Homeland Security calling for an end to the violence against ICE officers who they claim are facing a 413% increase in assaults when carrying out arrests.
Who has legitimate authority? Is it the executive branch of the United States of America, your president, Donald Trump, or is it the local governor? Or do you need a supreme authority transcendent of all political power, which ultimately will bend and tend and trend towards expediency, towards the interests of whatever sets of power you believe in? Remember, you might be watching this right now, someone who's disgruntled by the election of Trump, thinking this is the inevitable assertion of the Handmaid's Tale style fascism that was preempted and predicted before his election. Or perhaps you're a MAGA populist and think this is precisely the kind of entropy and decline that Gavin Newsom has presided over in that state. Our approach is somewhat different. Down here on the earth, you will have problems. You will have trouble as you try to deal with the contradiction of compassion and borders and boundaries. If you have a nation, you're going to have borders. If you have a nation, you're going to have citizenry. If you have an electoral mandate to deport people, then I suppose people are going to get deported. Do you want a globalist system where we're all citizens of the earth with one centralized government, all citizens freely moving around the world? That's certainly an interesting vision. It seems to me that both the nationalistic model and the globalist model are open to exploitation. Before we get into Michael Shellenberger's brilliant item on this, I'd like to ask you, if you don't have Rumble Premium yet, get Rumble Premium now. You get additional content from us every week. Have a look. We're streaming these days at these times. Join us there.
The tensions reaching a breaking point just as Kilmar Abrego Garcia arrives back in the United States. The 29-year-old Salvadoran man from Maryland became a symbol of Trump's immigration crackdown after the administration admitted to mistakenly deporting him, the government of El Salvador agreeing to his release to face charges. Abrego Garcia, now the subject of a 2-count federal indictment. Those charges stemming from this 2022 traffic stop in Tennessee, where Abrego Garcia was pulled over driving an SUV with 9 other people inside.
He's hauling these people for money. You got an collar is what he's doing.
The Department of Justice alleging Abrego Garcia was part of a human smuggling ring responsible for transporting drugs, weapons, and migrants, including MS-13 gang members. His attorney called the charges preposterous, and his wife had previously denied he had any affiliation with the gang.
It's been said for a while that we live in a post-truth world. When one church elevates someone as an icon and another church drags him down like it's a statue of Saddam Hussein, you have to recognise that our models of reality are in need of urgent review. Let's have a look at what Michael Shellenberger wrote about this on his Substack. Over the last several decades, the people who run California and its major cities came to a new consensus. A large number of our laws were racist and oppressive. Democrats increasingly viewed laws against illegal camping, open-air drug dealing, shoplifting, burglary, arson, and unlawful border crossing not as tools for protecting neighbourhoods and preserving public space, but rather as tools for putting poor people and racial minorities in prison. In the name of compassion, progressive dismantled the foundations of public order. I'm interested how compassion is deployed when increasing authority and now generating disruption. Compassion and kindness are vital components, fruits indeed, of a spiritually awakened being. But I suppose that if you evaluate a situation on the basis of what is caused by it rather than what the claims of the people deploying the policies make, then you'll understand more likely what the intention was. If chaos is being generated, perhaps the intention was always chaos. Over the last few days, we've seen the consequences of this ideology erupt in the streets of Los Angeles. We don't know whether all the protesters were American citizens, and I'm on the record vigorously defending the rights of the accused, including due process for those in the country illegally. But just as I believe the government must obey the Constitution, I also believe people must obey the law, and our leaders must enforce it. And yet California's leaders not only did not defend the law, they condemned those who tried. Governor Gavin Newsom called the deployment of 2,000 National Guard troops to restore order purposefully inflammatory. What's truly inflammatory is not sending in the Guard. In wealthy neighbourhoods, the law is still enforced. In poor and working class neighbourhoods, it is not. If you torch a car in Beverly Hills, you'll get arrested. If you do it in East LA while shouting political slogans, you're engaging in protests. This two-tiered enforcement is not progressive. The fact is, we live in numerous circuits of reality. The fact is, during the pandemic, there were many people in privileged positions. In fact, I was one of them that was able to live a pretty good life during the pandemic. I've got quite a nice house, quite a nice garden. It's no problem for me to be on lockdown. I don't like people anyway. No, I love people. I'd just rather be left alone, wouldn't you? Rather be with my kids and that, sit down and relax. The simple truth is, maximal efficiency would be under a blanket on heroin. Everything outside of that is a kind of compromise, is the simple truth of the matter. But we're here now, so let's get on with it. Let's not pretend we're living in an America anyway. We're living in a variety of Americas. That's what this cultural chasm is about. The inability of centralized media resources to maintain one narrative. It's a country that's always been divided anyway. The Civil War, the revolution against the British, all of these pivotal moments in American history created bifurcation. Where we live now is a point where maximum democracy is truly possible, where you can live in regions where you're responsible for your own food, where you're responsible for your own life, where you're not unconsciously tethered to economic and ontological systems that want you absolutely dumb. You will be disappointed by political leaders. Even the best political leaders in history are flawed and fallible. Martin Luther King, Nelson Mandela, FDR, who do you want? Churchill. Flawed, broken people. Now we can all communicate in real time continually about... I mean, it's only a couple of days ago that Elon Musk and Trump thing happened. I'm already a bit bored of it and talking about something else. The weight and freight of information is too much, mate. You're going to have to get outside of time and reach something eternal. Otherwise, you're going to just be lost in a constant, ever-shifting mosaic of fractured and fragmented time. A homogeneity of nothingness, a kind of cosmos of nothingness continually reconfiguring. There can be no order with this continual opposition. There is no agreement about America. This is the first post-Trump event that shows us there is not one America. This will clear your butt out quick fast. This is a coffee that believes in revolution. If the founding fathers were here today, they'd be drinking this. Alexander Hamilton would be sipping on this stuff. Dear Thomas Jefferson, he'd be downing this. And as for Sam Adams, I reckon he'd be snorting hard lines of it. And at the moment, 1775 Coffee have got a fantastic new deal. They're giving away free starter kits, free bags of coffee, 2 16 ounces of your choice, and the longevity brand, infused with CA-AKG, the clinically studied compound that actually helps reduce your biological age. When I started this, I was very nearly an elderly man. Now I'm one of those babies. Here I am, look at me. I've just had a couple of cups of it. Oh, I've never felt better. And the deal is simple. You pay the cost of 2 bags of coffee and $17.75 takes care of the rest. That includes the 3rd bag and the gear. This sounds like drugs. Matte black tumbler, a frother, gold scoop, reusable K-cup filter. Go to 1775coffee.com/brand and get your free starter kit and caffeinate your soul before someone in a boardroom pulls the plug. It's segregation by another name. It creates one set of expectations for the politically connected and another for the disposable. And in that framework, working people, especially immigrants, families and hourly wage earners, are abandoned. They're the ones who walk their kids past open-air drug markets. They're the ones whose shops are looted and whose cars are stolen. People sometimes ask me how California can feel so anarchic and so authoritarian at the same time. That's a brilliant question, isn't it? How can something feel anarchic, complete disorder and entropy, and so authoritarian and controlled? It's really interesting when Newsom, for example, says that Trump is being authoritarian. Just remember the pandemic period. Didn't someone get arrested for paddleboarding during the pandemic? Do you remember the protests, the street protests, the marches against the measures during the pandemic that were proven subsequently to be illegitimate, ill-advised? Do you know what an extraordinary event that was? Do you know how authoritarian it was? Do you know the depth to which we were lied to? Is it not inevitable that people would resort to a kind of individualistic, free market MAGA model, a nationalistic model, after globalism and imperialism lashed them so severely and obviously? California doesn't swing between chaos and control. It imposes both on purpose and at scale. As we saw when the leader of China comes to San Francisco, the city leaders end illegal camping overnight. Okay, the Chinese president's coming. Homeless people, you can all fuck off. Right, he's gone again. Get back out of the streets. Tip him back on the streets. If you can solve the problem of homelessness, solve the problem of homelessness. Don't wait for G Pin or whatever it's called. Oh, God, what are we going to do about homelessness? I don't know. Get a Chinese person to come. Right, it's a Chinese person. Right, everyone go to bed. What does it take for us to love one another? What does it take for us to acknowledge that we're here together for such a short period of time? That tribal identity, individual identity, fealty to the imagination. I believe I'm from here. Do you recognise that all these borders were at some point made up arbitrarily? You recognise that, don't you? You do recognise that a flag is a wonderful thing, but it's ultimately just a design choice. California is what happens when the state abandons its duty to protect ordinary people while tightening its grip on the law-abiding. Gavin Newsom and Karen Bass didn't just preside over the most draconian COVID regime in America. They led the charge. They demanded the closure of public schools for over a year while keeping elite private academies, including the one where Newsom's own children went open. We got to close all schools. What about the one your kids are at? Fuck that. I don't want them in the house. They're annoying. My ones are staying. I've got to deal with them in the corridors, arguing with each other. Can I do this? Can I do that? Get to your expensive private school. What about poor people? Well, they're fucked. They locked playgrounds and beaches, arrested surfers, and sent police to harass churchgoers, all while cheering mass protests in the street. If you protest against mandates, that's dangerous. If you protest against police brutality, that is not dangerous, unless the police get really brutal, which they won't. But it's confusing. They mandated vaccines for city workers while spending billions to give unconditional housing as a reward for addiction. California Democrats demanded that people show proof of vaccination to enter coffee shops, but allowed addicts to smoke fentanyl on the sidewalk outside. I'm moving back to that place. Restaurant owners for trying to survive and shut down gyms trying to help people stay healthy. Meanwhile, they decriminalized theft, refused to prosecute open drug dealing, and looked the other way as cartel-run fentanyl networks took over entire neighborhoods. They demanded that social media companies censor dissent, label truth as misinformation, and silence critics who warned of the obvious collapse. They banned plastic straws but passed out crack pipes. That is amazing. We've got to get rid of plastic straws. Have you seen what these things have done to dolphins' blowholes? Look at Flipper, poor little fucker. Right, now... some wine with a little bit of crack. Want some, Flipper? Oh, just stick it down his blowhole. In fact, we could attach it to this straw. They prosecuted pastors for holding worship services, but refused to prosecute men who beat women unconscious on public transit. This is not confusion, it's deliberate inversion. Sometimes I thought about that. I thought that they're trying to stoke a deliberate state of bewilderment so that we ain't got no principles, structures or ethics that we can cling to unless you're bowing down at the foot of the cross saved by his blood. What else are you going to believe in? What Gavin Newsom tells you this week, is that going to be your religion? During the COVID-19 pandemic, Governor Newsom released nearly 15,000 inmates from prison, including violent offenders under the banner of public health. A full one-third of them victimised people and ended up back in prison. That's amazing. Like, sometimes I think maybe it'll work. Maybe they've had an epiphany. Maybe the reform system works. Maybe they'll come out. No, one-third of them are recidivists. They're already back inside. For years, Californians were told by the media and political leaders that reports of rising crime were exaggerated or invented, but the data eventually became impossible to deny. The state's own figures now show that California's violent crime rate under Newsom rose to be 31% higher than the national average by the end of 2022. In LA, aggravated assaults rose by 23% between 2019 and 2022. When voters last November tried to take back control by passing Proposition 36 with over 70% support to allow judges to mandate addiction treatment, Newsom refused to fund it. The state, meanwhile, continues to throw money at failed addiction enablement programs, euphemistically referred to as harm reduction, while denying resources to courts, rehab centres and hospitals for psychiatric beds. They say abstinence is unrealistic, structure is colonialist and consequences are cruel, but that cruelty shows up every day in the form of people people overdosing in front of playgrounds, of encampments growing next to elementary schools, of teenage girls being harassed outside libraries. They're not reducing harm, they're redistributing it away from those with power towards those with none. Inadvertently, we've come into a subject that I happen to know a lot about, addiction, and in particular abstinence from addiction. The simple truth of this is addiction is a spiritual disease. People with addiction issues, particularly chemical dependency, are addicted to altered states. They cannot live here in this realm, on this domain, desacralized without any God. They will make gods of whatever you present them with, whether it's fentanyl or crack or crystal meth or sex or pornography. In the end, we have to have devotion and worship. If you try to reduce or minimize that harm, you've misunderstood it completely. These are people that have eternity rushing through them, stroke us. And the only thing that will solve that is a radical spiritual solution and the ongoing support of a community. That's not my analysis, that's the analysis of Jung, a pivotal and vital moment in the advent of addiction and the treatment of addiction through abstinence and through particularly worship and community. These values wouldn't only help addicts, they'd help all of us. Devout, resolute principles, not lifing us off into cells, imbibing continually the drugs of our time, whether those are chemical drugs or televisual drugs. What we need now is a radical spiritual solution. What these riots reveal to us is we're not living in one reality, we're living in several realities simultaneously. And the point of a spiritual transformation is for us via epiphany to enter into a transcendent realm where whilst we are different and to a degree physically separate, we are immanently connected by the grace of God, and through that grace of God we might help to participate in the coming of his kingdom. These riots, this chaos, this madness, this confusion may be bewildering. It sounds like Michael Shellenberger thinks it's supposed to be bewildering, but it will augur and midwife us into a glorious new era. And we want you to join us for that on Rumble at these times every day, and get Rumble Premium if you can afford it. Please continue to support us there. In the meantime, if you can, please stay free.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you want to see more uncensored content where free speech can flourish, join our live stream. Click the link right here to watch the next video if you want to, or become a member of a growing movement. Download the Rumble app and you'll be informed every time we make a new piece of content. Stay free.